Oh, this is Lee back. Oh, hello. This is Lee back once again. Just a little casual video here. Just wanted to talk about wrestling terminology. Yes, well, I've done several videos. I'm thinking maybe people don't necessarily understand what I'm talking about. Have to, explain. If you're new to wrestling, professional wrestling has its own, language, its own slang, its own lexicon, as they say. Well, anyway, if you go back in history, I'm not a historian of any kind, but, the 1800s, I believe it was when wrestling became fake. It became, scripted, planned. It was a circus act, a carnival, show. So they came up with these different terms. This whole language. Now, of course, if you ask wrestlers today, some of them will be very candid about it, and others will be like, "What are you talking about? I don't know what you're saying." As if it's all secret, because it is for a very long time, and for many wrestlers still, it's kind of an open secret, if you will. Anyway, it's all referred to as kayfabe. I don't know if that's Pig Latin for fake, but kayfabe, meaning the language that they speak. The whole thing is, of course, that professional wrestling is a competitive sport, that it is a combat, that these real wrestlers are expressing their true motivations, and that they're trying to defeat one another in these fights. That is, of course, an illusion. It is theater. It's like movie stuntmen. They're doing these tricks, some of which are quite dangerous, but they're trying to put on a show to make it entertaining. The outcomes are predetermined, and the moves, they decide what they're going to do, and they help one another to try to pull off the move. Sometimes accidents happen, but generally the whole thing is a big work. That's the next term, work. Now, work as opposed to shoot. Now, a work, when they say something is a work, they mean that it's a job. You go to your job and they say, "We want you to make 100 widgets. We want you to, write this paper. We want you to, build this house." That's your job. So as a wrestler, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this move, then I'm going to do this other move, and I'm going to say this thing, and etc. That is a work. So if you say a match is a work, you mean that it is this scripted, predetermined, theatrical thing. And if there's an angle, well, I'm throwing out more terms. An angle is something where a storyline. So, for example, Steve Austin, I'm just making this up, Steve Austin is angry because The Rock stole his car, so that he couldn't make it to the championship match against The Undertaker. And so he had to get on the bus, and it took a long time for him to get to the show. And when he finally got there, he's very angry, and he attacked, The Rock, and, he said, "Give me back my car." That would be an angle. An example of an angle, a storyline that was created to generate, hype, to create, excitement in the fans and uncertainty. Of course, some angles are terrible and some are very good. Of course, there's also a wrestler named Kurt Angle, just a coincidence that his last name sounds like that. Going back to another term, job. What is a job? Well, of course, a job is a task that you do to earn money, a paycheck. Well, anyway, they talk about doing the job, meaning that a wrestler would like to be in the spotlight. He'd like to be, beloved by the fans, but of course, he has to lose. He has to be defeated by someone, and of course, he's not trying to win or lose. He just has a role to play. So, if The Undertaker jobs to someone, it means that he has to be defeated. So it's kind of like, well, they'd rather win than lose. But of course, the wins and losses are predetermined. And so if you job to someone, you lose to them. Sometimes it's used pejoratively, kind of a negative way, saying, "Oh, they're a jobber," because all their character does is lose. But jobbers, of course, they are generally called enhancement talent. What they are is, to make other wrestlers look good. That's the whole point of a match. You may have two characters, but one of them is defeated soundly by the other. You could say it makes the one that was defeated look weak, look frail or easily defeated, but actually they can make the other one look powerful, look strong. So if you have, John Cena going against all of these, no-name wrestlers, is to say, wow, he can beat the average person. He's so good because these jobbers are making him look good. So there you go. Sometimes people just use jobber as just a slang for someone who's terrible. But generally that's what it means. You need winners and losers to drive the story in wrestling. Let's see, what else? Marks. Now, this is not Carl, but Mark, like a mark. It goes back to the old carnival days. These were people that were hoodwinked, they were tricked, they were fooled. It was con men, they trick people into thinking that, the magic is real. Marks were people who were drawn in by the story. They were fooled into thinking that, this was real, and they would give them money because they were so excited. Of course, nowadays, most people over a certain age know that professional wrestling is not an actual competition. These wrestlers don't hate each other in real life for the most part. If they do, they hide it within the storyline. But marks, nowadays, they say, well, these are people that take it too seriously. People that will pay money for anything. They are fanboys, fanatics. So the term, a little watered down, but it used to refer to those who thought that wrestling was real, professional wrestling, as opposed to amateur wrestling or collegiate wrestling. But professional wrestling is fake. And a lot of people get angry if you use the word fake, but it's as fake as, stuntmen in Hollywood or, the theater. Certainly people get injured in real life, but they are putting on a show. They are trying to avoid actual injuries, trying to minimize damage in favor of excitement. So there you go. What other terms? There's lots of other terms. Of course, I've gone through kind of the main ones. Terms you can find in other sources, Wikipedia, great source, many websites, many facts, a FAQ, of course, FAQ, frequently asked questions. There was a videotape that kind of got me started on this, which was Exposed, Wrestling's Greatest Secrets, so I give them a lot of credit. Of course, they were mocked for kind of acting like, sensationalists, not telling the entire story, but kind of getting to the basics for someone who, didn't know any of that stuff before. So there you go. Good source. So Exposed Wrestling's Greatest Secrets can be found online, but of course originally it was a VHS tape. More important terms are the two types of wrestler: the face or the baby face, and the heel. Now the baby face, of course, is supposed to be the good guy, the hero, the clean cut, whatever, non-cheating, the person you're supposed to cheer for, the beloved character. Then there's the heel, the bad guys, the ne'er-do-wells, the villains. So the heels and the faces. And then, of course, they talk about the tweener, the in-betweener, the tweener who basically is kind of an anti-hero, kind of sort of good, sort of bad. Can't really fit them in. Generally, though, the way it works is the heel wrestlers are the ones who cheat. They break the rules. They're mean to the fans. A lot of times they don't do flashy moves. They just do cheats. They poke people in the eye. They sneak in a weapon behind the referee's back. They trick. The other wrestler. They do little stunts to make the fans hate them. But the baby face, or the face, they will try to follow the rules. They try to generate enthusiasm with the fans. They love the fans. They'll play by the rules. But when the heel cheats, what will happen is the good guy will cheat himself. But because the heel has already kind of broken the ice by cheating, it's good when the good guy does it. So let me just create an example. Let's say it's the Undertaker, and he's bad, he's evil. And Hulk Hogan, he's the good guy. Of course, this is the old days before, the reputation of that wrestler was kind of tarnished by his personal life. But let's say, Hulk Hogan, oh, he's so, this all-American, whatever person. And so the Undertaker, of course, I'm just making this up, but the Undertaker, sneaks a weapon in, and he hits, Hulk Hogan with it. Oh, and the referee didn't see it, and then the referee has his back turned, and the Undertaker hits him again. And, the fans are just like, wake up, look what's happening, we're so angry, and, booing. But then, Hulk Hogan grabs the weapon away, and hits the Undertaker with it, and everyone cheers. Well, wait a minute. The babyface just cheated. He used a weapon in a wrestling match he wasn't supposed to. But it's because he was getting revenge against the bad guy, giving him a taste of his own medicine. It's like the bad guy deserved it because he was doing all this cheating. So it's kind of like that sort of happens a lot. That sort of sense of justice that the fans can see, that the official might be, they might have a segment where, he was bought off and bribed by the bad guys so that the Undertaker would win and Hulk Hogan would lose by pretending to not see the cheating. Of course, the referee is in on it just like everyone else. Let's see. What other things? Another term, spots. Like a spot is basically a stunt. So let's say one wrestler punches the other. That's, just a general spot, I suppose. But usually it's like a throw, a slam, someone jumping out of the ring, someone with an exploding, device, a weapon, a shot, a hit. Those big move, those are called spots. So basically it's, the wrestlers, they practice and say, okay, you're going to do a little flip, and then I'm going to grab you and slam you to the mat. But, we're going to do it in such a way that we try to not hurt each other. We're trying to land on the part of our body that's, going to take, the least amount of damage. But it's going to look good. And from the angle, it's going to look good. That's a spot. And they practice those ahead of time. And many wrestlers are so good, when they're doing a match, that they can just say, okay, we'll do the spot, we'll do this other spot, and they can kind of improvise. Well, the crowd looks a little bored. Let's quickly go to the the big spot where everyone can get excited. I'll throw you into the corner and start slapping you, and everyone will cheer. Those are spots. Now, calling a match, to call a match. Basically, what you do is the two wrestlers are actually talking to each other throughout the entire match, and you see this. Sometimes they goof up, and you can kind of see them mouthing the words. Very often, these long-haired wrestlers, or they'll get really close to the other person's face, like in a headlock, and they're really talking to them. They're going to put their head down. They'll say, okay, we're going to do that one move, okay, and then they do it. Now, there's also these rest holds, where, two wrestlers will act like, they're kind of like, they're kind of grappling. Those are actually chances for them to rest. So you notice very often these wrestlers, they'll run around and jump and do all this activity, and then suddenly they're in a submission hold, and they're just kind of like sitting there. That's a chance for them to catch their breath, and also to go over their moves. So, okay, what are we going to do next? So that's those are rest holds. And very often, some of the earlier matches in the history of wrestling did a lot more of these rest holds because it made it look more realistic, more like collegiate or Olympic or amateur wrestling. Nowadays, fans much more often demand more activity, and so the more rest holds they are, the more bored they are. Of course, in televised wrestling, they will often do these rest holds during a commercial break. So not a lot happens, while the ads are playing on the television. So there you go. Swerve. Well, a swerve, when we say that word, we're talking about a surprise for the audience. There's Vince Russo was famous for this, or infamous, depending on where you stand. But basically, the fans think in the storyline, something's going to happen, but then they change it, and something else totally happens, different, to... Yes, some more wrestling terminology. The swerve. A swerve is a surprise. These wrestling, writers and producers and things, people that put the show together, they're always trying to surprise the fans, what you least expect, try to give you something new. So a swerve is like you're expecting one thing to happen and something else happens. Sometimes the swerves are good, sometimes they're bad. But that's what that means, a swerve. A booking, bookers. This term, sounds like, the old gamblers and bookmakers and things. Well, this term is used in wrestling to refer to, booking a match, saying this is going to happen, putting it together. And the booker, I love the Wrestling Secrets Exposed VHS tape because, they have this guy on that, of course, they've changed everyone's voices, and he's like, you put two people together that'll draw money. Or something like that, I didn't do it justice, but I just love his voice, draw money. So, drawing money, of course, means that, you did something in wrestling that caused people to want to, show up and buy merchandise, buy the show. A lot of TV wrestling, what they would do is they would have these squash matches, where a squash means, you have two wrestlers, and one of them just defeats the other one with virtually no effort. It seems like they're unstoppable. They just destroy the other person. Sometimes they'll beat them in like 30 seconds. That's a squash match. They jobbed to that person. And it's basically to assert, the power of that other wrestler, that, this is someone that's really a threat, that's really going to rise to the top, in a hurry. And if it's a bad guy, it's uh-oh. The face is going to have to face this, deadly heel, who just squashed their opponent. And sometimes, there's backstage politics, someone maybe is on the outs of the company, and so the bookers will kind of be like, okay, you're going to lose tonight, and, we're going to make you look stupid because we're tired of you, the fans don't like you, or maybe we don't like you. So the bookers are the ones who decide who wins and loses. They're the ones who put together these match stipulations, to win this match, you have to pin this person. To win this match, you have to climb over this cage. To win this match, you gotta throw this guy over the ropes. Whatever. So those are some more terms. Now, a push. What is a push in wrestling? Well, it's not this. A push means that there's a certain person, a certain wrestler, that the bookers and everyone else, they want to succeed. So they will give that person more attention, more screen time, more, they'll try to get the fans really to like that person. Now, when I say like them, I should explain. There's another term, and I'll explain that in a moment, called heat. Well, what is heat? Well, heat means that if they're a good guy wrestler gets heat in the form of cheers, applause. You love this person. John Cena comes out and he's like, I'm the good guy. And everyone's like, yay, yay, let's go Cena, good job. Cena comes out and he's like, I'm the bad guy. And everyone's like, boo, you suck, go home. I hope your opponent beats you. John Cena, you're terrible. I hate you. That's heel heat. Boos and jeers and hissing and throwing things. Now, of course, in wrestling, you may get a character where they're pushing them to be a babyface, and the fans don't like them. They're trying everything they can to get this person to be liked, and it doesn't work. So sometimes they'll switch them, they'll turn them heel, they'll turn them into a bad guy. It's like, oh, you're going to boo him? Well, fine, we'll make him a bad guy, so you really hate him. But now, if they're supposed to be a heel and people like them, people cheer for them, it's like, I'm a bad guy, you're supposed to hate me, you don't hate me? I failed. So they try to change things. In the old days, it was, they try to get it so that, the storyline works, so that the fans see what they want to see, and it gets them to pay more money, buy more concessions, buy more t-shirts, buy more tickets, tell their friends word of mouth. Of course, in the TV age, everyone's so smart, they know everything about the business, and so it's so much harder to get, promote things, to people like this. So pushing, heat, then there's over. When someone is over, well, what does that mean? Over with the fans. So if a baby face is over, that means that the fans accept them as a good guy. They cheer them. they appreciate them. The push has succeeded. Now, if a bad guy, a heel, is over with the fans, that means that they've accepted them as this villain, this, bad person, and they boo them, And some fans are polite, they just, oh, okay, I'll boo this person and I'll cheer this person. But other people, you just can't help yourself. It's like you're watching a movie and you see a character, and it's like, oh, he's such a jerk, he's so mean. I know he's an actor playing a role, but he's really convinced me, he's drawn me in. If this were a real person doing this, I'd really hate them, Or a good person, oh, they're so heroic, I just admire them, even though I know it's fake, I know it's pretend. So that's what being over means. Now there's another term, burial, burying someone. This is controversial. Of course, many of these terms are controversial because, it's supposed to be inside the world of wrestling, and when fans use it, it's a little bit different. Sometimes they use it in a different sense, but burial means that, there's some storyline where the writing team wants you to forget about it. It's like, that wasn't such a great idea, it wasn't working very well, let's just pretend it never happened. Or they're burying a certain wrestler. Like, there've been many incidents in history. This happened to the Ultimate Warrior when he was still alive. He left the company and he said some bad things about them, kind of regretted his time there. And so the WWE created a DVD where they, basically bashed him. They made fun of him. They attacked him. They said that he was a terrible wrestler and everyone hated him. And, he was, worthless and a failure. And they were very mean. And it was a hit piece. It was propaganda. It was to, get him out of the spotlight, to say that, oh, we never cared about this guy. Of course, later they made up and, they made a tribute DVD to him, and then he died, tragically. So, that changed. But that does happen. Triple H in the WWF, this happened where, at the end of a big match in the Madison Square Garden, he, some of the other wrestlers, I think, were leaving the company at the time. They're kind of retiring from at the time, and so they had kind of a big hug, a group hug at the end of the match, and the fans saw it. But it was supposed to be like, well, you guys were just trying to kill each other a moment ago, and you were supposed to hate each other, and now you're friends. Because of course in real life, backstage, it's like, hey man, I liked working with you, and you're moving on to other things, so good luck. Come here, give me a hug. But there was a little recording, and they say that what happened was Triple H, he got punished because they basically were like, you exposed us. You showed the world that this wrestling is fake, that it's, back then they were more concerned about that. So they kind of, had him kind of humiliate himself and, not do as well on screen. They kind of, buried his character a little bit. So that's what they mean by burial. And there's a couple other terms here that I want to talk about. The term mark, someone who thinks that wrestling is real and they're being fooled. Then there's the Smartmark or the Smark, and these are terms that are, again, controversial. People debate these, believe it or not. The Smartmark is someone who thinks they know all about wrestling, but they really don't. They kind of just talk as if they do. And so there's smart marks and the smarks. Anyway, who cares? Most fans of wrestling, I think they realize, it's theater, it's fake, but they get into it anyway. So there you go. WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment, they've kind of created their own terminology, their own lexicon. They're trying to own the world of wrestling. And of course, they eventually defeated their main rival, WCW, World Championships Wrestling, which went out of business in 2001. They bought it up. WWE, formerly WWF, owns WCW, tape library now. And they also bought up ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling. They also bought up, I think, the old tapes of the AWA, which, I kind of forget, is it American Wrestling Association, something like that. So they own a lot of footage from old stuff, but they've started renaming things, and they've been doing this for a few years now. But the wrestling fans, they call the WWE Universe. Interesting. I forget which is the real term, but is it a title belt or is it a championship? That gold, little placard thing with the little, weightlifter belt around it that they wear around their waist as a, sign that they've won. So it's either a title or a championship. And the divas instead of wrestlers, women wrestlers, and TNA calls them knockouts, but they're just women who wrestle, and they call them superstars instead of male wrestlers, and they call it entertainment instead of wrestling, but it's wrestling, it's professional wrestling, it's the same thing it's always been, but that's what they call it. So they saw the term called blading, and this is a little more gruesome, but in the world of wrestling, sometimes they have these intense matches, and the wrestler, you'll notice, will start to bleed. There'll be blood coming down their forehead and on their face. And, you might think, well, maybe it's a blood capsule, it's a little, Hollywood trick, but actually, they really do cut themselves. They have these tiny little razor blades, and they make a little cut. And of course, it's kind of dangerous, to say the least, anytime you're opening a wound like that. But they try to do it in such a way that, they bleed a lot, but it looks a lot worse than it is. It's very small. When they say that, there's a blading the hard way, or getting color, juicing, they call it. But basically, sometimes, in a match, there'll be an accident. Someone will actually get cut for real and start to bleed. And usually they'll try to either hide it, try to cover it up. That's how you kind of know that it's a real cut. Or they'll kind of play it up like, the person's like, well, why aren't you trying to stop the bleeding? You're just like, oh, my face is so bloody, oh. And it's the sweat mixes with the blood, and it looks, drips down. It looks like it's way worse than it is. Well, wouldn't the referee stop the fight? That kind of thing. But it's fake, it's just making a tiny cut, and of course, you could get an infection if you don't treat it, and you could get scars if you cut too deep and so forth. There have been examples of wrestlers who've cut themselves, in a bad way, and they've bled too much, and they've had to, get stitches and get medical attention. But for the most part, it's just kind of an ick factor, And of course, the mat probably has a lot of germs on it from sweaty people rolling around on it. So if you're the last, wrestling match of the night and you're blading, you might get an infection if you're not careful. So a lot of promotions, they shy away from this and say, well, we don't want to do blading because, people know that it's fake. And yeah, it makes it seem more, violent and more intense. This, match has resulted in bloodshed, but, is it really worth it? So it's kind of controversial in wrestling, but there used to be a lot more of it on television, a lot more blading. Now, the term juicing could also refer to steroids, anabolic steroids, performance-enhancing drugs. These were illegal, at least in the United States, until 1988, and then they were banned, and there was a big scandal in the world of wrestling because, Vince McMahon, and his World Wrestling Federation, all his wrestlers were these big, jacked, muscle-bound, bodybuilder types. At least those were the guys that were, at the top of the roster, the face of the company, the ones that were really popular, these giants. And it was like, they're using steroids, aren't they? It's like, no, everything deny. If they are using steroids, we didn't tell them to do it. This big scandal. But the term juicing and saying someone's jacked, they're basically implying that, yeah, they're probably using steroids. Those muscles are probably, drug enhanced. So, you had a period where you saw some smaller wrestlers really getting pushed, but, certainly wrestlers in general, do a lot with physical fitness. Even the, so-called, fat wrestlers, they work out a lot. But some of these wrestlers, it's a little bit harder to believe that they look that way naturally or just through regular exercise, that they probably have taken some drugs, maybe some illegal substances to kind of enhance, their workout. And unfortunately, drug abuse is a problem in professional wrestling, as it is in Hollywood and as it is in professional sports. Even if it's not part of, trying to become the best and, the person who's on TV the most and get in the spotlight, the regimen, trying to keep up with the tour and trying to stay awake all night, to do everything you need to do. And then the addiction to painkillers many wrestlers get into. Even with that, there's still the temptation just of fame. It's like you've got money to burn and people want to sell you drugs, to party with. And people just kind of get into that routine and they get sucked in. It's very sad. So there's various, programs out there have tried to kind of help wrestlers, just as they help, people in other professions who are kind of, drawn into these drug abuse. But anyway, that's a whole other topic. certainly there's different, many different things that could be said about that. But that's wrestling terminology for you. A few more things. Merch. The term merch, just short for merchandise. It's the stuff that they sell at these wrestling shows. Usually it's t-shirts, digital versatile discs of wrestling posters, little autograph pictures, whatever. Merch. So people, sell this stuff, they collect it, whatever. It's more just, for fun. But some people really get serious about it, like they do other things, trading cards and things like that. So, the wrestling ring is not actually a ring. It's actually a platform, a stage, if you will, that has a canvas over it. It's called a mat, and it's got these 4 posts. And then there's actually steel cables. Sometimes they use rope, but usually it's steel cables stretched across in a kind of a square. Now, there's some wrestling promotions that use, 6 sides or 8 sides, like mixed martial arts, but for the most part it's 4 sides, but they call it the squared circle. They call it the ring, I guess because it, in old boxing, fights, they would make actually a ring, a little fence around the wrestlers just to keep the crowd back, And the old rule is, well, if you're up against the ropes, the other guy has to let go. He can't keep fighting you. So that's wrestling. But anyway, that's the ring. They call it that. There's another term that's kind of related to work, working a match, the fact that it's a job. They're creating this story and everything in the ring. Work rate. And I think this is kind of a term that's created by fans or whatever. It kind of refers to, saying that someone's a good worker and they have a good work rate. The rate they're talking about is like the ratio between rest holds and spots or moves, So if they spend almost the whole match just kind of like laying there in a hold, resting, going over their stuff, it's like, they're not as good. But if they can just like keep the action going, keep it flowing, keep everything moving, that they have a better work rate. So that's a term I don't really use a lot, but if you hear it out there, that's kind of usually what people are referring to. Fall, or a pinfall. What does this term mean? Well, usually at these matches, you'll have some announcer come out and make a big production of saying, this match is scheduled for 1 fall. What do you mean 1 fall? Well, a fall to a finish, a pinfall, it's a pin. What it just means is when the wrestler has both their shoulders to the mat, and the other person is covering them, meaning like just placing a hand on them or just laying on top of them or anything. They could be putting their foot on them. That's considered a cover. The referee counts 1, 2, 3. Some of them count fast, some count slow. It's not necessarily 3 seconds, but they count 1, 2, 3, and that's ding, ding, ding. They ring the bell. That's a fall. Now, in the old days, they used to have more series, 2 out of 3 falls, different things like that. But basically, a pinfall, you just get pinned. A 3 count on the mat, and that's a fall. It doesn't mean they fell down. There's another term, tap out, tapping out. Now, of course, there's a whole, production line of, t-shirts that say tap out on them. I think that's really due to the success of mixed martial arts, ultimate fighting, UFC, and all that, which, of course, is totally different. That's a real fighting, like boxing, not a staged fighting like professional wrestling. But anyway, tapping out, it used to be, you have a wrestling match, okay, you can pin somebody, but let's say someone's in a headlock and they can't get out of it. They would give up. They would submit. That's why they call it a submission hold. The person's like, I can't get out of the hold, or it's too painful. It's going to break my arm. I got to get out. And so they give up. And so it used to be they said, well, I quit. I give up. I'm done. I submit. It's like the little kids, fighting and says, uncle, uncle. I said, uncle. Well, then MMA, Ken Shamrock, all these people, became famous and they called it tap out because in UFC, the hold is too painful. The person can't get out. They tap the mat or they tap the arm of the person that's holding them, 3 times, let's say. And then that they signal, okay, that the fight's over. They've given up. It's done. Stop. Break the hold. Get out. It's over. So professional wrestling kind of picked this up, so they often say tap out, So a person will be, let's say the heel is in a hold and he's, getting grappled, and the good guy's like, yeah, give up, tap out, and the fans are like, tap out, whatever, tap, 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 tap. It's just kind of a funny thing. But usually in wrestling, the rule is, well, if you touch the ropes, they have to release the hold. So the wrestler's trying to get to the ropes before he has to give up, before he runs out of breath, or his arm gets broken, or shoulder dislocated, or whatever it is. And the really tough wrestlers, they never give up. They just pass out, and okay, the fight's over because he's unconscious. But the rule actually was supposed to be that if the plane of the ropes is broken by the limb of the wrestler, then you have to break the hold. But usually in wrestling, it's like this really dramatic, the fingers, they have to actually grab the rope. But if they're even touching the rope, and then the referee will make a count, and usually it's all theatrical, so they'll take forever to count. Someone getting counted out, that just means that, they're outside the ring, and the referee's counting 1, 2, and they take forever, and usually they get to 10, sometimes to 20. In the old days, it's much more often 20, because they could fight outside the ring a little bit longer. As long as they get back in the ring, it resets the count. But if they get counted out, it means they were disqualified because they stayed out of the ring too long. The referee counted them out. And of course, the disqualification, these different matches, usually it's like, well, they cheated and the referee saw it, or they cheated too many times, or someone else, interfered in the match, then it's disqualification. Of course, you'll notice that it's another sign that it's not real is, sometimes these crazed fans, these drunken fans, will actually jump into the ring. They'll hop over the barricade, over the fence. It's keeping the crowd at bay. And they'll jump into the ring, and usually the wrestlers will kind of work together to kind of like throw that person to the ground, kind of rough them up a little bit and throw them out. But the referee won't stop the fight because there's interference. But, of course, if another referee, if another valet, another wrestler tried to interfere and, corrupt the match, then they would call for disqualification. So, anyway, there you go. So, those are some wrestling terms. I hope that was helpful for you. A little bit fun. So, see you next time.